So in this lesson for UEFN, we're going to be covering how to add players and guards and modifying their settings. The reason that this is important in any game is that we need a way for the player to get into the level. And even though it seems simple, how the player spawn pad and the player arrives, actually we want to modify the settings to make sure that the game plays the way we want it to be played. Maybe it's not a shooting game, for instance. So first of all, how do we find one of these player spawn pads? It's come here in this level as a starting point, but maybe that's not in the level we want to build it. We're still a completely blank map and we need to find it. So we go to the content browser and we go to our Fortnite level and go to devices. Everything to do with interaction inside the project lives inside this devices folder. And you can have a lot of fun trying everything out, and I suggest you do. Now, I can never remember where anything is. I think this one's in gameplay. No, wrong straight away. Told you I would be. So I actually search for everything. I know what it is I'm looking for. I know it's a player spawn pad. So I'll type in player, and anything to do with the player is here. So I've got the player spawner, got a player reference, an audio player because it has the word player in it, player checkpoint, player counter. So quite a lot of cool things, but we want the player spawner. So you just click and drag that into the level. And there we go. We've now got a third one added to the scene. It's called player spawner here, but you'll see that actually it is identical to the others. It's just its position is different. So let's carry on working with our version of it. Oh, right, bit zoomed in. Useful little tip, if you aren't familiar with all these little icons, if you hit the letter G on your keyboard, it gets rid of anything that's not part of the game. It puts it into game mode. You can also access it from up here, clicking on this game view, and it just changes everything. So this is how it actually look in the game. And with the exception of things that maybe need to be hidden, like the base for this, we can come back to that. You should be able to get a good idea of what it looks like without little icons and things getting in the way. It can get quite busy. So in our details panel is where we're going to find everything to do with this project, to do with this item. And we want to make sure that it's set up so that our player has all the information it needs when it's spawned. So it's not just a player spawner, but it's also the thing that builds all of the content for it. So first of all, we can set teams. Teams is useful if you're doing a battle where you're shooting each other. You can also specify that it's the island start. Yeah, so that's where somebody would appear when they first come to the island, as opposed to respawning later, which might be a different spawn pad. Visible in game, you might not turn off because visible in game will get rid of the whole object, but there is an option to get rid of the base that we can get rid of later on. I'm not going to go through every single thing, but you will notice down. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confusing the player spawner with the item spawner. You do turn off visible in game for this one. There is another option to turn off the base of an object on the item spawner. I'll come to that in a second. So visible in game. So we can turn that off so we don't see the base. We don't see the spawn pad. The player just arrives. And is there anything else here that's useful to know? The only other thing is we could actually turn it off so it's not available, but we need to come into looking at devices and interactions, which will be in the next lesson. And I'll explain how this all works because it's kind of complicated. So that's our player spawner. Player mesh is here. Now, you could add a player mesh to this, but it's no point because the player is the character that's been created by the person at home, the audience, the user. And they've created their own avatar. They spent money on all of the clothing and the emotes. That is what's going to appear here. So if I played this level right now, the character that I currently have, the assets that I currently use to define my avatar, the look of it, all of that will be what appears on that spawn pad. So it doesn't matter really what you put in here. It's not going to spawn it. Right, well, that's actually quite a simple lesson. Oh, no, we still got to do guards. Let's go back and look at guards. This is a bit different. So now, rather than searching for player, let's search for guard. Guard spawner. A guard is always the enemy in this context. We can do that. Now, it doesn't have to be an enemy that shoots you. It's a non-player character. There's other sorts of non-player characters in here as well, which we'll come to in a second. So guard type, we've got a few different looks. Shark, IO, trespassers. It's not a great list, to be honest. Number of them, you can spawn them, so it will create 20 of them at a certain point in the game, depending on when you trigger it. Spawn through walls. Do you want it to spawn outside of its object? If you put it in a room, do you want it to appear in the room on the other side, or is it going to stay within that room? Is it enabled at the game starts? So if I untick this, the guard will not be there when the game starts, or maybe it will be. Item list. What is that guard carrying? So we can assign a gun to him. So what we got? We got shotguns. Let's give him a shotgun. So now he's going to have a shotgun when he appears. That's the weapon that he carries. The item quantities. How many shotguns does he have? Now, one, I presume. But if you had, for instance, a grenade instead, let's have a boogie bomb. You might say, oh, he starts with 6 of those, so he can throw 6 of them before he runs out. Infinite spawn. Every time you kill it, will it respawn? And after how long? You have a spawn timer that allows it to spawn again after a certain amount of time. So here it's 3 seconds. But you could say if you kill somebody, that they will respawn a minute later or an hour later. The spawn radius is whereabouts it will actually appear. So it won't appear on the pad. It'll appear somewhere within that radius, and we can make that smaller by changing the spawn radius. Logically, I would say it needs to be quite small, because if that's where you want it to be spawned, that's where you want it to be. But of course, your game might just allow for a lot of random players. So you could say, let's spawn 20 guards within this area. Spawn rotation, direction of the pads, player spawn visual effects. It's like a nice little ripple thing, like a hologram loading up. You can make it invulnerable so it never actually dies. That would be annoying. Or we can just change all of its health and shield settings in here. So that's how you preset all of its shield controls. Patrols are quite useful. You can build a patrol direction, or a place where the patrol goes by drawing a spline, and we can assign that to a patrol. So that path, spawn path, will get given an ID, and you assign the ID, and it will follow that path. So that's how you get a guard to follow a specific route. Or we can specify the patrol dimension. So we can say you can patrol anywhere within 10 meters or within 200 meters or 2.5 meters. Visibility range is how far away you need to be from him before he sees you. And if he sees you, he'll start shooting, or she. And that can be propagated across to all of the other team members. So if it sees you and it starts shooting at you, it will then go looking for the rest of the team. You can specify how difficult it is to kill you or be killed by it. So low accuracy up to very high. Despawn guards when disabled. This is if this guard is actually assigned to you as a protector. So you could, rather than having it an enemy, you could have it as an NPC that you can hire. So you click can be hired. There is a hire conversation if you want it. You give them a name. You can specify the amount that you spend on it and how many shields they get when they're created. But what it says here is despawn guards when disabled. If you disable the spawn pad, it gets rid of the guard. So you can create mechanisms later on for controlling that. Use alertness is when it goes, oh, there's someone there. You can turn that off. They'll just start shooting at you instead. And again, all of these functions here, we're going to come to in the next lesson in a very, very small way to explain what it's all about, because all these little pluses and symbols and things are slightly complicated. So there was one other thing I wanted to show you, which is NPCs. Now, these are slightly different. Again, if I go back up to Fortnite, and I've got characters in here, and here we've got all the Fortnite characters that ever existed. Okay. So who do we like? We like fish sticks, don't we? Let's have a look at fish sticks. All the different versions of fish stick. There's been quite a few different versions. There's a classic. Let's just bring him into the level. It won't let me. And there's a good reason for that. I'm jumping ahead. To enable fish stick, we need to assign him to an NPC character slot. So to do that, we need to bring in an NPC spawner. And that's an NPC spawner there. So I'm going to bring in the NPC spawner, and you can see it starts off with our very favorite Agent Jones, who actually is very close to my current version of my character. Maybe you'll see a bit later when we test. So our NPC spawner starts off here. There's nothing in it. It's very similar to the guard and the player setup, but we can specify the NPC character definition. So create a new NPC character definition. I'm going to create NPC test 1. What we need to do is go to our content browser, find the NPC character definition that we just created, double click on it. And this allows us to make modifications to how this AI will behave. In here, we have all sorts of settings for creating AI controls that are programmed in verse. So initially, we have custom guard and wildlife. These are 3 sort of NPC character types. So I'll change this to guard. It gives us guard profile. Wildlife is animals that run around. They can't kill you or not kill you. We're just using the custom one at the moment. Empty behavior, because we haven't programmed our own, but you could code up your own AI behavior for that character. NPC character modifiers is where we actually change the skin. So I've got the health modifier and the team modifier. These are all sort of tools that you might access if you wanted to set, for instance, which team the guard appears on or the character appears on. And we have a cosmetic modifier here. If we open this up, we can go down and see, we can have the character look, Fortnite character or a custom character. If it's a Fortnite character, this is where we'll find fish sticks. So we can put in fish stick. There we go. And now that has changed the character definition. Character movement, default movement, because it's based on the Fortnite character, but we could put in our own animation system that we've built ourselves using animation blueprints. Or even if we brought in our own character, we bring in our own blueprinted Fortnite character that we've made ourselves. So we'll save that. And then once we've closed it down, now you have to note that you must make sure everything's saved for this to work, but we can now see it in here, providing we've saved the NPC test asset and we have saved the level. That is now available to us. We can swap it out and there is fish stick and he'll behave the way that we've programmed him to. We can make a few more changes to him, such as the spawn radius and the spawn timer, just like the guards, and the usual collection of objects and functions that we will be having a look at in a very brief way in the next lesson, which is time for now. So in the next lesson, we're going to look at devices and interactions. So this is the end of learning about players, guards, and NPCs.